Hello everyone, welcome to 6 African Trade Talks. I'm your host, Chawanda. To those that are joining us for the first time, this is our second episode of the Intra-Africa Trade Updates. So we had the first one in January, and we will be doing this every month just to give you an update of the 10 key things that would have happened that we would have selected in the Intra-Africa trade space around the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for listening to our podcast, and I would like to also encourage you guys, please leave a review on our podcast pages or wherever you're listening to podcasts. And in order for us to grow a better Africa and for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and for intra-Africa trade to grow, we need to share information. So it will also be nice if you could share whatever episode that you would have enjoyed, if you could share with friends, family, colleagues, or anyone that you feel should learn more about the Africa Continental Free Trade and intra-Africa trade. Our first update is around the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the agreement. We will start by acknowledging the good, positive move that has happened. Zambia submitted its instruments of ratification of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which only leaves now 18 countries that are yet to ratify. 7 are in SADC, and these 7 are Botswana, Comoros, DRC, Madagascar, Mozambique, Seychelles, and Tanzania. The other countries that have not ratified, which are AU members, are Benin, Burundi, Cape Verde, Central African Republic, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Libya, Morocco, Somalia, South Sudan, and Sudan. There is one outcast. Eritrea is yet to take the first step of the signing of the agreement. One would look at them as an outcast, but I will say to you, I had an interview with one gentleman from Nigeria. This is our next episode that will be coming in the beginning of March. And I understood why Nigeria took time to sign and ratify the agreement. So I'm sure Eritrea is in the same space where they are doing consultations within their country to make sure that they know what they are getting into, and they have done extensive consultations. So it's not all negative when a country takes time to participate, but we hope and we look forward to having Eritrea as part of the agreement. Number 2, we go on to finance. Afreximbank has set aside a $200 million envelope to support FEDA. FEDA is the Fund for Export Development in Africa, which will be headquartered in Rwanda. And whilst we are on FEDA, it is sad to announce that in February, we lost Dr. Philip Kamau, who was the CEO of FEDA, and someone that I met in 2019 in Namibia when I announced that I would be starting my journey to travel to all the African countries within 24 months. Sadly, we lost a great African. May his soul rest in peace. We also now look at FEDA. Going back into FEDA, FEDA is a private equity fund which has been set to promote and facilitate intra-Africa trade. So there hasn't been any significant private equity investment set aside or private equity investment players that were looking at promoting intra-Africa trade. So FEDA is an initiative of the Africa Import and Export Bank, Afreximbank. So that is a great initiative from the bank. Number 3, there is good news as well in the finance area for our mothers, sisters, and daughters. The AFDB, Africa Development Bank, Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, AFAWA, has partnered with Africa Guarantee Fund, AGF, to build a 1.3 to 2 billion loan initiative for SME finance for women. This is a great initiative. If you look at the intra-Africa trade space, there is almost or around $50 billion of trade that happens in the informal sector. And majority of this, I believe, is around women trading across countries. So it's important to give them a platform that is structured in order for them to be able to grow sustainably their businesses and their initiatives that they are always working on to improve intra-Africa trade. There are already financial institutions in a number of countries that have already aligned themselves to take advantage of this initiative and to make sure that their citizens have access to this initiative. And just to mention a few, these countries are Cameroon, DRC, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda. So there is positive traction in that space. Number 4, AFC, the Africa Finance Corporation, have shifted its energy portfolio towards greener projects. The AFC board agreed on a plan to bundle new and existing projects for solar, wind, and hydro projects into 1 to 2 gigawatts projects and units, which then can be floated possibly on the London Stock Exchange. This is a game changer. A lot of investments in Africa have been segmented into smaller units, and by putting together projects and making them bigger, it allows investors to have access to sizable projects, which then can meet the appetite of investors outside the continent. The AFC has already invested 60 million in wind power projects in Djibouti, and also it is looking at Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Madagascar, and Mozambique. Number 5, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, in February had a crackdown on cryptocurrencies, and their reason for this is that they believe, and this is not just Nigeria alone, a lot of other countries in Africa have gone down the crackdown route on cryptocurrencies, citing that they present risks such as money laundering, financing of terrorism, illicit movement of funds, and other issues that affect credibility of a country. So this is quite interesting. And there are also other entrepreneurs and key industry players in the finance sector outside Africa that have also raised concerns on cryptocurrencies. This comes at an interesting time in the global village where Elon Musk of Tesla has invested over 1.5 billion into Bitcoin, which is also a cryptocurrency. So it is quite interesting to see where this is going to go. We move on to trade. What is our updates in trade? So number 6, importers in Kenya that use Mombasa Port have received a big relief with a judgment that just came out with a 5-judge bench which overturned government directive to use the SGR, standard gauge rail, from Mombasa into Nairobi. Instead, they can carry on using trucks to move their product. So this is a big relief for importers in the East African region that use Mombasa Port. They are free to use either road or to use the SGR route in terms of moving their goods, importing them into the region. Number 7, we move to Beitbridge. Beitbridge border has seen volumes increasing, and this is not entirely because trade has started going up. This is because Botswana has been sticking to strict COVID regulations, which have in turn affected importers and transporters that use Botswana as a route going to either Zambia, Malawi, Angola, DRC via the Groblersbrug, which is a border into South Africa. So transporters have had to reroute and go via Beitbridge. So that has seen Beitbridge congested, and officials in Beitbridge have resorted to clearing critical cargo faster so that they can try and work on the congestion. So if you are exporting and looking at exporting in the Southern African region, those are the challenges that you would face. Beitbridge is a busy border in the region. So very key update. Number 8, Kenya and Uganda have agreed principally on a bilateral agreement. Kenya has been having issues with its neighboring country, Uganda, on bilateral matters of imports and exports, where Kenya has cited that Uganda is working as a dumping ground for cheap imports of sugar that are coming from Brazil, which in turn then move into Kenya and disrupt the sugar industry in Kenya. So in turn, because Kenya had raised those concerns and sort of restricted sugar coming into Kenya from Uganda, Uganda had also then retaliated by banning or restricting fruit juices and pharmaceuticals products that were coming from Kenya into Uganda. So for the past year, they have been having challenges, and this bilateral agreement hopefully will ease that and improve the movement of goods between the two countries. We move on to UK. Again, we are still in Kenya. So UK and Kenya have signed a free trade agreement, which is yet to be ratified, and the ratification has been delayed because of concerns in the UK Parliament that could pose challenges in terms of the intra-East African community trade relations. With Kenya having a free trade agreement with the UK, that poses concerns and challenges for the other members of the East African community who are citing that they might end up having goods coming into their territory, coming from the UK, and taking advantage of that relationship with Kenya, and then by in turn utilizing the East African intra-trade relationship. However, this has come at the back of the marginal increase in trade in East Africa, which has moved from 5.7 billion in 2014 to 5.9 billion in 2018. EAC, based on sources, has only 6% of its imports within the region and 20% exports within the region. So it hasn't grown significantly, and this UK agreement could pose a challenge in already a challenging growth. So that is the feedback as far as East African community is concerned. Number 10, the free trade agreement with China and Mauritius. So Mauritius has signed a free trade agreement with China. This again poses some challenges for intra-Africa trade agreement, the AFCFTA, because goods, if they come into Mauritius has always played a key role in terms of intra-regional trade as a finance hub for business that operates within the SADC and to some extent COMESA regions. So for China to come and sign an agreement with Mauritius, it poses some concerns for trade policy leaders, that it poses a concern which has been raised by some trade policy leaders who are watching and trying to understand if there are any value additions that could come from this agreement, and if there are anything to watch that could affect trading under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So that was it all for us in February. We look forward to another good month of positive traction around the intra-Africa trade space. And thank you all for listening. We look forward to hearing your feedback, and stay well, stay safe. Wish you all the best.